There comes a moment in every life when the questions get louder than the answers, when comfort no longer satisfies and something deeper calls out to you. That's not confusion. It's a divine invitation. When you seek not just casually, but with every fiber of your being, the course of your life doesn't just shift, it transforms. Tonight, we explore what happens when the search becomes sincere and the heart becomes whole. There is a kind of power that only awakens when you are no longer halfway in, when you stop giving fragments of yourself to the search for meaning, and finally decide to go all in. You see, the world doesn't respond to casual seekers. Destiny doesn't reveal herself to the past. Life, real life, only begins when you pursue your purpose with a whole heart, with every ounce of your focus, your energy, your will. Too many people are frustrated not because they're doing the wrong things, but because they're doing the right things with divided attention. They seek with one eye open and one foot out the door. And then they wonder, why isn't anything changing? But the truth is simple: transformation doesn't happen where there's hesitation. Power doesn't show up where there's partial commitment. You can't unlock the door of purpose with a halfway key. Now hear this: when you truly seek, when your entire being becomes aligned in the pursuit of something higher, something eternal, something shifts. Not outside of you, in you. That's when clarity begins to replace confusion. That's when fear begins to crumble under the weight of conviction. That's when things begin to move. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you got more focused, more aligned, more determined. This is the kind of seeking that pulls you out of routine and drops you into revelation. It wakes you up in the morning with purpose. It keeps you up at night with vision. You're no longer surviving, you're living. You're no longer guessing, you're knowing. Because your heart isn't divided anymore. Your spirit isn't drifting. You're locked in. You're grounded. You're clear. And let me say this: when you start to walk with that kind of fire, people notice. Doors open that used to be locked. Conversations shift. Opportunities find you. Why? Because alignment creates movement, and movement attracts favor. But you have to start with all your heart, not some of it. Not when it's convenient, not when you feel inspired, but now and fully. That's the key. That's the breakthrough. You don't need more motivation. You need decision. You need to make the internal shift that says, this isn't just something I want. This is something I must have. This is non-negotiable. That kind of clarity becomes magnetic. It draws transformation to you. Not because the path gets easier, but because you get stronger. Now here's the question I want to leave you with. What if the change you've been praying for isn't waiting for a miracle, but waiting for a shift in how you see? Because once you seek with all your heart, the world around you won't be the only thing that changes. But what happens when the thing you're seeking starts seeking you back? Let's go deep. There's a kind of transformation that doesn't begin with change on the outside. It starts with intimacy on the inside. When you seek with all your heart, you don't just get answers, you gain access. Access to a dimension of clarity, strength, and power that most people never tap into, simply because they never go deep enough. You see, purpose was never meant to be found at the surface. Identity doesn't rise in shallow waters. True change, lasting change, comes from intimacy. It's what happens when your desire isn't just to fix your life, but to connect with the source of life itself. Not to be rescued from the storm, but to know the one who can calm it. And that kind of intimacy, it costs something. It demands silence when the world wants noise. It asks for focus when distractions are screaming. It requires your attention, your honesty, your presence. But let me tell you, the reward is unlike anything this world can offer. Because when you step into that space where it's just you, your hunger, and the presence of something greater, you begin to feel it. A peace that overrides panic. A confidence that replaces confusion. A strength that wasn't taught, but transferred. This is where transformation begins. Not in striving, but in alignment. Not in performance, but in presence. You begin to walk differently, talk differently, think differently, because you've been somewhere most people never go. You've touched something most people only hear about. You don't just learn the truth, you become it. You start to live from a place of knowing, not guessing, trusting, not fearing, flowing, not forcing. Why? Because you're no longer operating from information. You're moving from revelation. And that kind of living can't be shaken. People will ask you what changed. And you'll know it wasn't the job. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the relationship. It was intimacy. The kind that reorders your thinking. The kind that rewires your expectations. The kind that redefines what success even means. You stop chasing validation because you've already been affirmed. You stop needing applause because you've already been anchored. And when the storms of life come, and they will come, you won't be shaken. Why? Because you didn't build on hype, you built on So the question isn't what do you need to change in your life? The real question is how deep are you willing to go to access the power that changes everything? Because once you find that level of connection, you'll never settle for casual again. But here's the mystery. What if the transformation you seek isn't waiting at the end of your effort, but at the beginning of your surrender? And what happens when your search turns into discovery? There's a moment when everything you've been seeking, searching, reaching, crying out for something real, something lasting, something greater. And then it happens, you stop chasing shadows and you're found. Not just by a breakthrough, but by presence. Not just by opportunity, but by identity. When the seeker becomes the found, it's not because the journey ends, it's because the journey transforms. The one who was searching becomes the one who is seen. You don't just discover answers, you realize you've been pursued all along. The signs, the nudges, the moments of stillness you couldn't explain, they weren't random. They were a call, a whisper, a setup. And now you realize you weren't seeking just to find something. You were seeking to become something. You've been shaped in the search, molded by the move, refined by the fire of pursuit. The very act of seeking changed you. Your eyes see differently, your ears hear differently, your spirit responds differently. You stop begging for clarity because clarity has already arrived. You're no longer asking, where is, because you've become aligned with what is. You don't need to force doors open anymore. They open to you. Why? Because alignment is the magnet of destiny. It's in this moment that you understand the thing you were trying to reach was already reaching for you. The deeper you went, the more real it became. The more honest your pursuit, the louder the response. It's never been about performance. It's always been about posture, a posture of openness, of expectation, of readiness. And now, you're not just walking toward purpose, you're walking in. It meets you in the details. It shows up in the decisions. It shows up in your peace, in your clarity, in your boldness. You no longer need to chase signs because you've become one. People start asking you, what changed? But how do you explain that? How do you describe a moment that wasn't on the calendar, a transformation that didn't come from a book, a shift that didn't follow the rules? You can't explain it in formulas. You can only live it. You've moved from seeking to being sought, from wondering to walk, from hoping to knowing. And that right there is the mark of a life that has stepped into alignment with something greater. But listen closely, this is not the end. This is only the threshold. Because once you've been found, once you've been called out of the noise and into clarity, the next question is not who are you seeking, but who are you becoming? Because when you know you've been found, the next step is learning how to live like it. But what happens when surrender isn't just a moment, but becomes your new momentum? Everything changes when you stop visiting purpose and start living in it. When you stop treating transformation like a weekend guest and begin to welcome it as your new resident. The unshakable life isn't built on inspiration, it's built on surrender. Full, complete, intentional surrender. And listen, this isn't about giving up, it's about giving over. It's when you say no more halfway, no more backup plans, no more safety net. That's when you discover a life that can't be shaken, a peace that doesn't break, and a purpose that doesn't pause. You see, everything changes, not when your situation changes, but when your position shifts. When you stop leading with fear and start standing in identity. When you stop reacting to life and start responding from clarity. That's when you walk through storms and don't sink. That's when the opinions of others can no longer define you. Because you've surrendered your need for control and gained something far greater. Alignment. People will look at you and say, why aren't you stressed? Why aren't you anxious? And you'll know it's not because the situation is easy. It's because you're anchored. You've surrendered the chaos and stepped into clarity. You've given up the illusion of control and gained the strength of conviction. This kind of life doesn't shake when things fall apart. It stands, it endures, it speaks with authority, walks with power, and moves with purpose. Because it's rooted, not in ego, not in emotion, but in something deeper, something unshakable. And here's the truth: when you truly surrender, you stop living from pressure and start living from presence. You stop chasing what looks good and start living what feels right. You stop asking, "What do I want right now?" and start asking, "What's aligned with who I'm becoming?" Surrender reorders your life. It filters your decisions. It clears your distractions. It pulls you out of performance and into purpose. And that right there is the life you were born to live. A life that doesn't need approval. A life that doesn't crumble when the crowd leaves. A life that knows who it is and who it's not. So let me ask you, what would happen if you finally stopped fighting the process and started flowing with it? What would your life look like if surrender wasn't your last resort, but your first decision? Because the moment you surrender completely, you step into a rhythm that cannot be shaken. But now that you've surrendered, the next question is even deeper. What laws have been waiting to work in your favor the moment your heart came into alignment? There is a hidden law, one that doesn't show up in textbooks, doesn't get taught in school, doesn't flash across your screen, but it governs breakthrough, it governs clarity, it governs destiny. And that law is simple: what you truly seek with all your heart will reveal itself to you. Not maybe, not sometimes, not if you're lucky. It's a law, just like gravity, just like time. When your heart, your focus, your energy, your intention all move in the same direction, something has to move. The problem is most people seek with their lips, but not with their life. They say they want purpose, but they don't align their habits. They say they want clarity, but they won't silence the noise. They say they want growth, but they resist the stretching. But when you finally decide, no more halfway, no more excuses, I'm going all in, the law activates. The seeking becomes magnetic. You stop searching blindly and start attracting with intention. You stop begging for direction and start living in alignment. This law doesn't respond to emotion. It responds to intention. It responds to consistency. It responds to authenticity. You can't fake this kind of. The law won't move for performance, but it will move for purity. It will move for alignment. And here's where everything shifts. The moment your heart gets locked into the right frequency, everything around you starts to echo it. Doors that were closed begin to open. Ideas that were hidden start to flow. People you never imagined meeting start showing up. Not because life got easier, but because you got clearer. That's the power of this hidden law. Seek with your whole heart, and you will find. Not by chance, not by accident, but by design. You'll start to realize it was never about chasing something down. It was always about becoming the kind of person it was designed to find. This is where alignment meets authority. You begin to speak from a deeper place. You begin to move with a rhythm that doesn't come from culture. It comes from conviction. You're not just living, you're operating. You're not just trying, you're manifesting. But make no mistake, the law only responds when the heart is all in. Not halfway, not part-time, not when it's convenient, but fully. And when that happens, when your whole life becomes a yes to something greater, that's when seeking turns into seeing. That's when wondering turns into walking. That's when hoping turns into harvest. So let me ask you this: what has been waiting for your full attention before it could finally reveal itself? Because once the law is activated, the atmosphere shifts. But the next question is this: what's keeping your heart from being whole? And how long will you let it block the A divided heart is the silent killer of clarity. It's the reason why so many people are moving but going nowhere. Busy but not becoming, active but not aligned. When your heart is split, when part of you wants purpose, but the other part clings to comfort, you create conflict within your own destiny. You say you want change, but are you willing to leave behind what no longer serves you? You say you're seeking truth, but are you still holding on to lies that feel safe? A divided heart is like trying to drive with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake. You're revving the engine of your life, but never gaining traction. And here's what most people never realize. Confusion isn't always a lack of information. Sometimes it's a result of divided intention. You've got too many tabs open in your soul, too many voices speaking into your future, too many options, too many backup plans. And when the heart is not unified, the vision becomes blurred. You can't walk in power with a heart at war with itself. You can't attract purpose while entertaining distraction. Wholeness doesn't come through more effort. It comes through alignment. It comes when you make the bold, terrifying, necessary decision to let go of everything that's fighting against the very thing you claim to want. Because here's the truth. Your future isn't waiting for more effort. It's waiting for more unity within you. When your mind, your will, your emotions, your actions, and your spirit all agree, you become unstoppable. That's when doors don't just open, you start commanding them. That's when favor finds you, not because you chased it, but because you became the kind of person it's attracted to. But a divided heart delays destiny. It creates hesitation. It produces cycles. You move forward, then you sabotage. You dream big, then you talk yourself out of it. You get inspired, then you shrink back. Why? Because the parts of you that want growth are still battling the parts of you that fear change. And until you resolve that war on the inside, you'll keep wondering why nothing's moving on the outside. Peace doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from agreement. And when your heart becomes whole, your path becomes clear. So ask yourself, what's pulling you in two directions? What belief, what fear, what relationship, what distraction is dividing your heart? Because until that's resolved, clarity will always feel out of reach. But once you make the decision to unify your heart, to let your actions match your intentions, your steps match your vision, your mindset match your calling, everything begins to align. Now here's the question that sets up the next shift. What if the wandering in your life isn't from a lack of direction, but from a lack of decision? There comes a moment in the journey after the seeking, the surrendering, the aligning, when clarity starts speaking louder than confusion. Not because life got quieter, but because you got tuned in. You're no longer guessing, you're no longer wondering, you're no longer asking everyone else what you should do. Not in your head, but in your spirit. Because when your heart becomes whole, your hearing becomes clear. You stop mistaking noise for direction. You stop chasing signs and start walking in signals. You stop reacting to pressure and start responding to peace. And here's what you discover. Peace is not passive. Peace is not silence. Peace is a compass. It's a signal that you've stepped into alignment, that you're moving in rhythm with something deeper than logic, stronger than opinion, greater than fear. When you truly seek with all your heart, you begin to unlock clarity that can't be explained, but it can be trusted. And that clarity begins to lead you, step by step, decision by decision, choice by choice. It shows up in conversations that confirm what you already knew deep down. It appears in opportunities that carry no confusion, no compromise, just conviction. It whispers when to speak and when to stay silent. It tells you what's for you and what's simply a distraction wearing a good costume. You don't have to push anymore. You don't have to beg. You don't have to chase, because you've learned how to recognize what belongs to you. And that right there is the result of clarity born from deep alignment. But here's what's powerful. Clarity doesn't just help you move forward. It helps you say no to what doesn't. And let's be honest. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't a wrong path. It's a good-looking path that was never yours to begin with. Clarity gives you confidence. And not the loud kind. Not the boastful kind. But the kind that stands calm in chaos. The kind that doesn't explain itself to every opinion. The kind that moves without asking for permission. Because when you have clarity, you stop living to prove and start living to produce. You stop measuring your life by speed and start measuring it by alignment. And in that space, things begin to flow. Not always easy, but always right. Not always fast, but always on time. So let me ask you, what decisions in your life right now are waiting for you to stop second guessing and start trusting what you already know? Because once clarity becomes your compass, hesitation loses its power. But here's the question that sets up the next level. Now that you can see clearly, are you ready to move courageously? Clarity without courage is just a dream on pause. You can know what to do, feel what to do, even see what to do. But until you step into it with boldness, nothing shifts, nothing moves, nothing breaks, because revelation requires activation. You don't just need direction, you need decision. You don't just need clarity, you need courage. And this is where many people freeze, not because they didn't hear, not because they didn't believe, but because stepping into purpose often requires stepping out of comfort. And that gap between knowing and moving, that's where courage lives. Courage doesn't mean you feel ready. It doesn't mean all the lights are green. It doesn't mean the fear is gone. Courage means you go anyway. You move forward even when your knees shake. You take the leap even when the outcome isn't guaranteed, because something inside you knows it's time. There will always be a reason to, always a voice that says not yet, always a question in the back of your mind, what if I fail? But let me ask you this, what if you don't? What if everything shifts because you took the risk? What if the door opens because you knocked one more time? You don't grow by staying safe. You grow by stepping into the unknown with a clear heart and a bold spirit. And here's what's powerful. When you move with courage, you begin to unlock doors that fear kept closed. You begin to realize that the obstacles weren't as strong as you thought. They just look big from the sideline. Courage shrinks fear. Every time you move forward, even a little, the giant gets smaller. The fog begins to lift. The hesitation begins to fade. Why? Because motion is proof that you believe. And when you act on what you believe, even when it's uncomfortable, life starts responding in favor. You'll see the right people show up, the right ideas take shape, the right timing align. Not because you forced it, but because you flowed with it, and you'll look back and realize the fear didn't leave before you moved. It left because you moved. So I'm asking you now, what are you delaying that you already know is yours? What decision, what phone call, what shift, what bold step is waiting for you to stop thinking and start moving? Because when you combine clarity with courage, you become undeniable, not loud, not arrogant, but certain. And that kind of certainty, it moves mountains. But don't stop here, because once you've stepped out with courage, the next level begins to form a question in your heart. Now that you've moved, are you willing to sustain what's been revealed? You didn't come this far just to visit transformation, you came to build in it. Because real change isn't just about what you start, it's about what you're willing to sustain. And this is where many fall off. Not because they weren't inspired, not because they weren't called, but because they weren't committed. Sustaining transformation takes more than a moment of excitement. It takes discipline. It takes consistency. It takes waking up every day and saying, I choose alignment. Again, even when it's hard, even when it's quiet, even when it's not producing visible results yet. That's the test. Can you keep showing up when no one's clapping? Can you keep walking when the feeling? Can you stay faithful to the process when the promise hasn't fully shown up? That's the mark of someone who's not just passing through purpose, but planted in it. Transformation isn't maintained by hype, it's fueled by habits. It's the quiet decisions you make behind closed doors, the ones no one sees, the choices that reinforce who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Sustaining transformation means becoming a guardian of your own growth. You can't afford to entertain old mindsets. You can't revisit what once broke you. You can't keep feeding what you already left behind. Because here's the truth, what you sustain, you strengthen, and what you stop feeding, starts fading. So the question becomes, what are you feeding right now? Are your habits aligned with your healing? Are your routines supporting your revelation? Or are you slowly slipping back into familiar patterns, dressed up as just taking a break? Sustaining the shift means protecting your progress. It means learning to say no, not because it's bad, but because it's not part of the blueprint. It means choosing discipline over dopamine, vision over convenience, long-term over quick wins, because you know, what you're building isn't just for today, it's for generations. And let's be honest, sometimes you'll feel tired, sometimes you'll question it all, but that's when you remind yourself, you're not walking in circles anymore, you're on a path. And this path has power in it, purpose in it, reward in it. You just have to keep showing up, because the momentum you build in quiet seasons becomes the momentum that carries you through the storm. The discipline you develop in hidden moments becomes the confidence that shows up in public ones. So now I ask you, what routines do you need to reinforce? What distractions do you need to shut down? What part of you needs to stop negotiating with your own breakthrough? Because when transformation becomes your standard, you no longer tolerate anything beneath it. And now that you've chosen to sustain it, here's the next question you need to ask yourself. Are you ready to become a magnet for what's been waiting to find you? Becoming a magnet is not about luck, It's not about chance meetings or random opportunities falling into your lap. It's about becoming a force, an energy, an undeniable presence that draws what you need and who you need right into your life. And here's the key: magnetism starts on the inside. You see, when you truly seek with all your heart, something changes within you. Your energy shifts, your mindset transforms, your spirit, your core begins to resonate at a frequency that pulls in what matches it, not by accident, but by design. Magnetism isn't about attracting what you want from the outside, it's about becoming who you were meant to be on the inside. When you do that, everything around you begins to rearrange itself. The right doors open, the right people appear, and the right opportunities flow toward you like gravity pulling planets into orbit. But here's the challenge: magnetism requires consistency. It requires that you stay true to your path, even when distractions scream for your attention. It means you must guard your energy fiercely, because every thought, every word, every action either builds your magnetic field or weakens it. You cannot attract greatness while entertaining negativity. You cannot pull in abundance while doubting your own value. You cannot become a magnet for destiny if your heart is divided, your intentions unclear, or your courage stagnant. Magnetism is the natural result of a life lived in alignment, fueled by clarity, courage, and commitment. When you combine all these elements, you step into a power that doesn't rely on force or manipulation. It simply is. And people, opportunities, and breakthroughs, they come to you. Now, what does that mean for you? It means it's time to ask yourself, are you ready to cultivate this magnetic presence? Are you ready to clean your heart, sharpen your focus, and strengthen your courage, so that you can no longer be ignored by destiny? Because the world is waiting for the real you, the version of you that's no longer chasing, but attracting, the version of you that's not begging for chances, but commanding them, the version of you that walks into a room and the atmosphere changes. So here's your moment: will you settle for less, or will you rise as the magnet for everything you've been seeking? Remember, everything changes the moment you truly seek with all your heart. Now go and live that